Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching NewsX World. Let's first take a look at our top stories. Russia says that recent Ukrainian drone attacks do not facilitate the peace process amid further strikes from either side. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Europe is sabotaging peace as Ukraine's Zelensky warns of a fresh Russian offensive. Dozens of deaths following Israeli strikes in Gaza have been reported by local health officials as US-backed aid deliveries begin in the war-torn enclave. This comes as the US denies that Hamas has agreed to a ceasefire proposal. Southeast Asian leaders are holding their first ever summit with China and the 6 Gulf Cooperation Council nations. The annual ASEAN summit is taking place in Malaysia amid global trade uncertainties following US President Trump's sweeping tariffs. Taiwan's Ministry of Defense says that dozens of Chinese aircraft and naval vessels have been detected around the self-governed territory. Tensions have been rising amid fears that China could launch a full-scale invasion of the island it claims as its territory. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says that the whole country stands with Liverpool after a car ploughed into people celebrating the Premier League victory. Almost 50 people have been injured as police say a man has been arrested and that the incident is not terror-related. King Charles III is set to open Parliament in Canada with a key speech in Ottawa. Britain's monarch, accompanied with Queen Camilla, met Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney yesterday amid rising tensions between Canada and the United States. The Bangladesh Supreme Court has acquitted Azharul Islam, an Islamist leader on death row, sentenced for murder, rape and genocide during the 1971 Liberation War. The Jamaat-e-Islami leader is accused of killing over 1,000 people. French President Emmanuel Macron will soon meet Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto in Jakarta to strengthen relations, defence and economic partnerships. Macron has been in Vietnam, where he has faced questions over an apparent push in the face from his wife. We start this hour with the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, and the Russian Foreign Ministry has announced that work continues on a draft memorandum aimed at addressing key issues in the Ukraine conflict. This document is seen as a potential path towards diplomatic resolution. Here is what the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson has said.
Разработку проекта меморандума относительно будущего мирного договора с определением ряда позиций, таких как принципы урегулирования, сроки возможного заключения мирного соглашения, потенциальное прекращение огня на определенное время в случае достижения, подчеркну, соответствующих договоренностей. Как только меморандум будет подготовлен, а я хочу отметить, что министр иностранных дел России Сергей Лавров буквально ежедневно комментирует ход его проработки, он будет передан в Киев. Рассчитываем, что украинская сторона ведет такую же работу и направит нам свои наработки одновременно с получением российского документа.
In other developments, Russia and the United States have made progress towards a prisoner swap, showing signs of cooperation amid tensions. On the sanctions front, Russia reiterated that Western measures will not break its will or hinder its strategic goals. The Foreign Ministry called sanctions counterproductive. Meanwhile, China's Foreign Ministry responded to reports claiming it supplies military plants to Russia. China denied these claims, stating it has never provided lethal weapons to any party in the conflict. This comes as Ukraine's Air Force reported that Russia launched 60 drones in an overnight attack. In response, the Russian Defense Ministry claimed that 99 Ukrainian drones were shot down during the same period. Russia has also warned that Finnish naval exercises are becoming tools for NATO escalation near the Russian border. Finally, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov criticised remarks made by German politician Friedrich Merz, calling them unhelpful to peace efforts. Well, we bring you now some breaking news in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. Russia has hinted at a second round of peace talks with Ukraine in Istanbul. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the Turkish city remains a very good location for direct negotiations. The proposal comes after talks with Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan in Moscow, marking a possible shift towards diplomacy amid the ongoing conflict. Let's listen in to what the Foreign Minister had to say.
Что касается второго раунда переговоров России и Украины, если вы спросите меня, я бы вновь обратился к нашим турецким друзьям в Стамбуле очень хорошо. Что касается второго раунда переговоров России и Украины, если вы спросите меня, я бы вновь обратился к нашим турецким друзьям в Стамбуле очень хорошо.
Well, several developments in the ongoing conflict, and joining us to discuss them is Martin Sa-Arrayes, an international affairs expert who's joining us from Quito in Ecuador. Martin, as always, thank you for joining us today. Let's first discuss this breaking news. Of course, those talks that happened in Istanbul in the middle of May have yet to be followed up, and Russia today hinting that further talks can take place in Turkey. What's the significance of this amidst the ongoing impasse at the war?
So I think Turkey wants to mediate between Russia and Ukraine. However, Turkey is the perfect place to mediate because, in one hand, Turkey is part of the NATO, which can be positive for Ukraine. But in the other hand, also the Turkish government is not a aggressive government towards Russia. However, I think the Russia's draft memorandum likely refers to diplomatic efforts or a proposal related to peace talks or conditions for negotiation. So I think it's not very likely to have a ceasefire in the near future, but I think if both parties come to the conclusion that it's impossible to win the war, they will definitely start talking about peace negotiations.
Yes, absolutely, Martin. And this comes, of course, as the Russian Foreign Ministry has spoken about a memorandum. But we do know, of course, that both sides in this war are looking at key points that they disagree on. How do you think the two sides can come to some compromise, given that they're so far apart currently in what they both desire in work towards a ceasefire?
Okay, so I think Russia's foreign minister claims it's working on a draft of the memorandum. However, it might be part of a broader narrative to appear open to diplomacy while continuing military operations. I think Zelensky is not willing right now to give up on all of the specific requests of Russia. They are not willing to give up on Crimea, on also other former Ukrainian territories. So I think there should be a huge necessity to peace or a huge threat into Ukraine so that the president of Ukraine can start thinking in negotiation. I don't think this will take place in the near future, but I think it's going to happen according to the next developing of the war. There's a lot of factors that can influence this development, such as China, which apparently is neutral but is still having a strong economical position favoring the Russian Federation.
Yes, let's look at some of the overnight military action that we've seen. Strikes reported from both sides, around 60 allegedly targeting Ukraine, around 100 targeting Russia. Given both sides are talking about peace, is the ongoing strikes detrimental to that happening?
Yeah, so I think right now we're seeing like a shift in world politics towards this war in Ukraine and Russia. Recently, Donald Trump is actually quitting his support towards Russia, and that's a good thing for Ukraine. I think these implications can be very positive for Ukraine and for its support, talking about the international community. So I think the next step is Ukraine getting stronger and Russia realizing that they're not going to be supported by the international community, and that's a good sign.
Let's look at that international support, Martin, to end this discussion. Talks of a potential prisoner swap between Russia and the United States. Of course, since Donald Trump has assumed office for the second time, relationships between the two Cold War nations have eased, with discussions taking place with Steve Witkoff directly with Vladimir Putin. What role did the US have to play in these negotiations? Of course, in the midst of threats from the US administration that they would step away if no progress is made in the immediate term.
Absolutely. I think, of course, US as a superpower is absolutely meaningful for the development of these negotiations. I think Trump changed or shifted his strategy because of domestic policy. I think he got a lot of criticism within the US and within its partners around the world, and I think this is just a political move because he doesn't want to ruin his career, and I think he's gonna stop supporting Russia, and I think this is a very positive development. I think Ukraine will gain a lot of significant international support, and I think this will lead to a very meaningful negotiation with Russia, since Russia is going to realize they're not longer being neutral. I'm talking about Trump, that Trump wanted to be neutral between these two countries, but right now he's putting his side again to the natural partner of the US, which is Ukraine.
Martin Saar-Arayes, as always, thank you ever so much for providing your insight. We will, of course, be across all of the developments in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, specifically looking towards potential second rounds of talks between Russia and Ukraine. We move on now, though, and in a landmark move to navigate growing global uncertainties, leaders from Southeast Asia, China and the Gulf gathered in Kuala Lumpur today for their first ever trilateral summit. Chinese Premier Li Qiang called the talks a response to the call of the times as trade-dependent nations seek stability amid shifting geopolitical winds. Let's have a listen in to what the Chinese Premier had to say.
我们双方通过更为紧密的联系和合作，能够形成资源、制造、市场等有机聚合，造就一个充满活力的经济圈和增长体。对于我们各自的经济繁荣，对于亚洲乃至世界的和平和发展，都具有重大的意义。
Well, the summit comes as fallout continues from US tariffs introduced under President Donald Trump, a move that disrupted global trade norms and spurred many to rethink economic alliances. Malaysia, which holds ASEAN's rotating chair, played a key role in launching this initiative. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim said the three regions can shape a more resilient, connected and prosperous future. Let's have a listen to what the Malaysian Prime Minister has said.
So ASEAN-GCC relationship will certainly be key in enhancing inter-regional collaboration, building resilience and securing sustainable prosperity for all. Now, today's deliberations will be crucial in ensuring that our partnership remains dynamic, responsive and impactful. We have the means and responsibility to rise as anchors of stability and engines for future growth.
Experts say ASEAN, long a diplomatic middleman between major powers, is now actively diversifying partnerships. Strengthening ties between China and the Gulf states is a big step in that direction. This meeting marks what leaders describe as the beginning of a new phase in regional cooperation, one built on economic pragmatism in uncertain times. Well, joining us to discuss the summits and the ramifications of the conversations that are being had is Gautam Mukherjee, a senior journalist. Gautam, thank you as always for being here. Let's first look at the significance of this meeting with China, ASEAN and the GCC. Given the fact that Donald Trump has recently been in the Gulf and has made deals to the tune of billions, if not trillions of dollars, how significant is this meeting taking place today?
Well, it appears to me that this is a Chinese-Malaysian initiative. Malaysia is quite close to China, and they are trying to form, as it is, ASEAN has leaned towards China over the last many years. They're trying to draw in the GCC countries also to try and do bilateral trade with China in order to blunt the Trump tariffs. Having said that, the size of trade that is possible between the ASEAN countries and China, as well as the ASEAN countries and the Gulf, is fairly limited. When you look beyond oil, the oil goes to China, of course, in a large measure, and of course comes to India in an even larger measure. Whether they have very much else to trade between them is a matter of a question, because really most of the ASEAN countries do not have a great deal to trade. I'm sure they'll be looking for investment, however, and that is where the Gulf may come in. The GCC is also looking to expand its horizons, and ASEAN countries may prove a place to invest. China is already doing so in Thailand and Malaysia in particular, not so much in some of the other countries. And GCC may well find areas into which it wishes to invest.
Yeah, Scott, of course, this in the wake of Trump's Liberation Day tariffs that have swept across the world and impacted global markets equally as markedly. Let's look now at the Trump administration and this move. Do you think that what they've done has potentially opened the door for a shift in balance with trade, specifically looking at the ASEAN nations, China, and potentially the GCC?
No, I don't see enough of a tilt. I think this is by way of an additional avenue for the GCC countries in particular. ASEAN and China have always been dealing with each other. They will continue to do so. India is conspicuous by its absence at this particular summit because it is basically a China-Malaysia axis, and India is really not interested in promoting that. In fact, when there was an effort to draw India into a satellite relationship with China in the ASEAN region, India refused to join. To what extent this will make any difference to the global order remains to be seen, but it is highly doubtful. Let us remember that the GCC are major exporters of oil and gas, and that's about the length and breadth of it. They are importers of a lot of consumer goods, and to that extent, the ASEAN countries may be benefited. As far as China goes, China does trade with the GCC, but it also trades with America, which is its biggest single export market. And without America, followed by Europe, this trade, even if it expands, is not going to meet the requirement of a substitution to American and European trade. So there is very little option China has but to come to terms with America and Europe in terms of the tariffs, and it isn't possible for China to play off Europe against America because, again, the European consumption of Chinese goods is far lower and exports are far lower. The two-way trade is far lower. So really, there's no wiggling out of it, but this is an additional avenue, and that's what it amounts to.
Gautam Mukherjee, thank you ever so much for taking the time to speak with us. We stay in the Indo-Pacific region as we move on, and Taiwan's Ministry of National Defence has reported increased Chinese military activity around Taiwan, with 61 PLA aircraft sorties and several naval vessels detected in one day. Many aircraft crossed the Taiwan Straits median line and entered Taiwan's air defence identification zone. Taiwan's military is prioritising combat readiness to deter Chinese threats, with President Lai Ching-te emphasising preparation for a potential war of endurance. Training has been revamped and asymmetric warfare tactics, including air defence and drones, are key strategies. Taiwan's extended compulsory military service and upcoming Han Quan exercises aim to enhance defence capabilities. Meanwhile, Chinese authorities in Guangzhou have accused Taiwan's government of being behind a cyber attack on an unnamed technology company. The public security authorities in Guangdong province claim the attack was carried out by a foreign hacker group supported by Taiwan's Democratic Progressive Party. Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council has not yet commented on this allegation. The investigation is ongoing. Well, joining us to discuss these developments is Dr. Roger Liu, a senior fellow at the Flame University, joining us from Taiwan. Dr. Liu, thank you ever so much for being here. Let's first look at these military drills and airspace violations that have been reported by the Taiwanese Ministry of Defence this morning. Is there any significance at the fact that this is two separate incidents that have been reported, one up until 6 a.m. and a second from around 8:15 a.m. This morning? Could this be a signal of a potential full-scale invasion, or is this just a repetition of the further tensions we've seen in recent weeks and months?
For having me. I think this is part of the chain attacks or responses from the PLA and the party state of CCP towards Taiwan in the past few months, after especially President Lai Ching-te has escalated the war of endurance tactics by raising the awareness from the Taiwan side against China attack. Well, China has never stopped using this kind of military gestures to threaten Taiwan. So I think this is this is part of that increased pressures. But the Taiwanese side, along with our allies, including the US, actually has been worrying about this. And we have upped the ante for the past few months, especially by treating PLA's threat more seriously from the political gesture to limited using limited military actions, trying to force Taiwan to accept the possible political solutions for the future. Because certainly Taiwan has been trying to increase the social resilience within the island by setting up different institutions, by trying to recall the pro-China legislators and politicians within this island. So I think China actually has failed this kind of responses. So they are trying to send out military gestures to express their dissatisfaction regarding that, and to test Taiwan's readiness and preparedness of the possible attack for the future.
Yes, Dr. Liu, I want to get an understanding of the feeling within Taiwan when these military drills are carried out by China. What does it do to local communities? And what's the feeling within Taiwan, considering the sort of consistency of this level of activity?
Well, generally speaking, the society of Taiwan, different part of the society of Taiwan has not been in a panic mode. This is not something that we've been dealing with them. However, we feel the pressure has been increased, and the frequency and the sorties, the amount the intensity actually has been escalated, and this is what we felt. However, what we are well, generally speaking, Taiwan's society has been functionally has been functioning in a normal way. So we are not crippled or influenced very much, and people are still talking about the daily events. Nobody has been interfered or disrupted. However, well, for the military increased pressure, actually, the Taiwanese authorities or the government actually has been preparing for the possible attacks for the future. For example, we've been trying to, by extracting the experience from other wars, including the Russian-Ukrainian wars, we are exploring more possibility by using different kinds of weapons, including drones, to deal with the possible attacks from the PLA. Because now we think we don't worry about their conventional attacks, because this is more like a military gesture. We're worrying about some kind of special tactics they might employ. For example, they have sent out single individuals to reach Taiwan in a mysterious way. Well, people just they board Taiwan on the shore in a raft, only single person. And this is really strange, because Taiwan and China has been separated by 100-mile Taiwan Strait, and this is so strange that this person can come here. And secondly, we found that they have increased the simulation attacks on the models of presidential office in mainland China. And thirdly, we found that they are trying to use what's happening between India and Pakistan, trying to, by spreading fake news, to exaggerate the efficiency of their J-10 fighters, and try to use that to threaten Taiwan more.
Yes, and Dr. Liu, very briefly before we end this discussion, I do want to talk about this alleged cyber attack China says the Taiwanese government was part of. What's your opinion on these allegations?
Well, between the two armies, cyber attacks actually has been engaged by different armed forces as another branch of the warfare. So, of course, the Taiwan government or the military will deny it. But if this is not illegitimate to deal with your rivals with an attack like that, of course, I think from the PLA side, they have done 10 times more than what they allegedly, accuse us of doing. So I think to send out some kind of signals to the PLA side that Taiwan actually has the cyber attack or counter attack capability is very necessary. So I firmly believe that based on Taiwan's capability, we will be able to counter the attacks from China, and we will be able to initiate such attacks if necessary. So I think that's legitimate.
Dr. Roger Liu, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing your insight. That is all that we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more of the latest breaking news from across the world.